Yep, long live DMX. Died at 50. Long live Black Rob, who died at 51. So together, that's 5150, which is the psychological hold that hopefully was symbolically broken. Because you know when they put you in the 5150 hole, what that means, right? In law, that's when they commit you to asylums and stuff, and that's basically what they both were regarded to. You know what I'm saying? So, you gotta do the knowledge to that. Also, it's been reported this dude has made over 750 million since all of these dudes gonna have records out, stuff like that. But if we look at the rise of other companies like Rockefeller and Death Row, we'll see all of the same things, man. They all had catalog, and now that catalog belongs to everybody but them. So this is not just a trend. This is how that business goes. Like as soon as the verses starts blowing up, you know what I mean? Instead of them sitting on it or holding it down or keeping it so-called black owned, the first thing they do with the first real logo offer they get, based on what they could have got if they held on to it, you know, they take. And now again, it's an Asian person running it. So when you see these verses and they suck from this point on, the last good one was Ray and Ghost, and that was right when they sold it. So that's basically the end of the whole structure anyway. So that's a wrap. So again, none of these platforms that they talk about as being black owned or black controlled or anything black, anything leaves itself open to some sort of infiltration. And that's just what it seems to be, you know, in all of these different modes of control or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, you have to pay. Yeah, Wayne got the royalty money from the $100 million deal, which is really lowballing him compared to the amount of catalog he had. However, he's an addict, so you can't really look at these people as being in control of themselves. Like he's been molested and raped, you know what I mean, in the game from the beginning. So you can't really look at this person as a well-functioning individual. You can't look at any of them as that. And to a large degree, with people like him, in that regard, it's not his fault because he was sold to the game early. You know what I'm saying? Whether he sold himself, his people sold him, whatever, he was sold out and not taken care of because the baby booming generation was the most selfish generation in history. It's from them we get the divorcee generation because the baby boomer generation was the generation that was given the biggest lie. That was the intense generation that was post World War II and was given the understanding that white supremacy was the way to go. That is when you see the rise of African republics, but more African stereotypical representation on TV and stuff like that. During the rise in the 70s of all of the so-called black republics, what was the biggest shows on black TV during that? Roots. Think about that, yo. While all these African nations was getting their independence, we watching all of our people getting enslaved, being taken from Africa, right? Benson, the Butler, right? Good Times, the Projects, Cabrini Green, what up? And that was written by Jay Leno. Jay Leno was a writer on Good Times. Yeah, he wrote for JJ. He wrote dialogue for JJ. Okay. The Jeffersons, yes, the Jeffersons actually was a spin-off sitcom from All in the Family because George Jefferson was the nemesis to the old white Mason Archie Bunker, who came in during the whole 60s busing shit, remember? That's right when Carol, his daughter, had the baby. And Michael, who was Rob Reiner, right, was the aspiring liberal ACLU dude, right? But in the end, Archie and And George was cool because not only was they both Freemasons, they both knew that this black and white shit was just a way that they was keeping their family together and getting money. People like the Jeffersons so much, they moved that up, right? And then they give them their own show. Meanwhile, Sherman Hemsley in real life is gay. Roxy Roker's married to a white man. You dig what I'm saying? So look at what's going on. Then Lionel was painted to be the one that was supposed to take over, but then they deified him when they made him the Black Panther, right? And then from the Black Panther, before then he was in the gang, right? That's programming. We all emulating that. You understand? We grew up emulating and creating that. Just shit. Thelma still look great. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean about the way that we've been engendered into this reality and understanding it. Like I had a discussion today about the UCC, right, and how that is the the main focus that people use to categorize they status and things like that. But really, that's just another tool. That's just something that was created around the time I'm talking about to basically tabulate who was debtors and who was not over the U.S. That's really it. And it entails the codified rights of the admiralty that you invoke on the private side. So it's not the end all to be all to what you're doing. It's just another way to catalog what you have and then have remedy if these people do that, because you classify who is the debtor, who is the creditor. Which then satisfies the admiralty requirements to show that you're not a vessel lost 6 years beyond the sea under the cess that we trust, but it doesn't necessarily dictate what your nationality is. It just denotes that and categorizes that. You have to set aside the fee schedule, the fee simple, the hold harmless, the power of powers. These are the different documents that go and back up everything in the collateral statement that you put in that little section for the collateral. You understand? So again, it's just another militarized, occupational based who's in the field, who's in amity, who's an enemy combatant situation. You understand? It doesn't define what your nationality is. Like, it's really there to deal with statutory entities that try to impose upon your state's jurisdiction. That's essentially what it is. And a category cataloging element for what exists within the estate. So that way the clear delineation between the debtor and the creditor is made. So if they try to go public and try to make the debtor into the creditor, you always have a remedy to show and prove cause based upon using that UCC filing as the exhibit. And the Secretary of State who is over those UCC filings as witnessed by tacit consent. Everybody understand? That's why you never hear me go into it like that, because it's cool when you're setting the trust up and all that other stuff. But aside from that, you know what I'm saying? It's not like you whip it out. It's not like it's not like it's a diplomatic passport. Like it's not that. You know what I mean? So yeah. So DMX, yeah, Black Rob, more bones for the foundation. So we focus more on the stories and the songs and the myths instead of, the destruction of these men's lives. However, they signed up for that at the same time. You know what I mean? Yeah, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that was really dope. I thought it was very poignant. The writer, okay, everybody saw the joint on Netflix about Deb Antony and Bimmy and like the Bahamas Haitian Jack and all of that, right? On that documentary, there's this lighter skinned black man who has an afro or whatever. He's the guy that's writing and he's giving commentary in that. He's the guy who, one of the writers on Falcon with the Soldier. I like the way that they show how the white man's the devil without getting into the white man being the devil. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think is dope. And I understand both sides of it. I understand because, like, as a kid who actually read comic or read comic books or read comic books and stuff, as a kid, I liked Captain America. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't that I didn't like the Black Panther, but um, I did, you know, the story, how he was, the shield, you know what I mean? It was dope to me. I didn't see him as a symbol of white supremacy at, you know, 8, 12, you know what I'm saying? But I see later, as I got older, they had to inject those types of themes within the book because now I was older and didn't see, you know what I mean? I'm an educated reader now, so I'm reading it from a different perspective. So now the stories gets more and more inclusive. So by the time the truth came out, the comic book that actually really showed Isaiah Bradley, I thought it was dope. But what they do with shit like that sometimes is makes like the book will be dope, the cover be dope, the story be dope, but then the art will suck. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, they was able to put a lot of people off from the book just because the art was whack. Right? Exactly, Donnie. The art was horrible. Exactly. They got this dude, Kyle Baker, I believe, who was the artist. And I never liked this stuff. But regardless, that's who they got. He was called the Winter Soldier because all of the Soviet black bag product operations in real life were put under the cold winter. You know what I mean? So the op was always like winter breeze, winter storm, like whatever. So him being a winter soldier was American kidnapped, brainwashed through the Manchurian candidate stuff and then brought back, which is basically a throwback to what they do in real life when they put these people through what they call total control in the military complex. That's why when a lot of soldiers come back, they not necessarily the same. Where they was the same, but the soldier thing triggers in them real quick because of the trauma they put them through to turn them into instant killers. The PTSD comes after the trauma. You see what I'm saying? But they are not registering what's happening to them as trauma. Why? Because the army tells them that it's training. You see what I'm saying? Training, trauma, it's the same thing. Programming, it's the same thing. Education is the same thing. We grew up with the lie. We were programmed with the lie. Now we're deprogramming ourselves with what the lies are, and then reprogramming ourselves with what we believe or know the truth to be. You understand? That's why you can't get it twisted and get wrapped up in earthly arguments that these people try to do because they're all in the same place we are, if not worse, because they are adopting identities knowing that the real identities do still exist. You understand? So the psychological dependency on the actual um, illusion is what perpetuates the need for the illusion to exist. No one would care about an oasis if the whole place was full of lush vegetation. People only appreciate oases in deserts. You understand? And some people, when they couldn't find them, actually created them in their mind and would be found dead because they was convinced themselves that they was drinking from a well and they was just putting sand down their mouth. Read The Alchemist by Paul Coelho about the Moors. Also read what happened, the curse that the Spanish received from the Moors in The Man from La Mancha, Don Quixote. You understand? So the illusion is real. So this right here is what is called an allegory of America. This America was always seen with the crocodile and all that. And as you see, it's a Moor. But they say that this Moor is an Indian. You understand? And that's true. People did call this Moor an Indian. But it doesn't mean that that Indian was really a Moor. You understand? What I'm doing now is going through what they call palindromes, where I'm giving you the element or the aspect of the story, but also the irony in the story that makes it relatable and factual. See what I'm saying? What people do is program us with the story and beat it into submission and beat us into submission with it. You understand? So the running thing is Moors are not Hebrews, or Moors are not Americans, or Moors are not, you see what I'm saying? It's always that. But they never talking about what Moors you talking about. Who you talking about? What Moors you talking about? Who do you mean? Which ones in particular? That's like saying all blacks is lazy. Okay, blacks are lazy, but which blacks are you talking about? It couldn't be the blacks during what you call slavery, because these are the niggas doing all the work. So when did they become lazy? When you took their jobs, when you took their communities, when you took their means of influence, when you took their prestige, right? That's when they got lazy, because now they even when they try to get a job, they can't get one. So what do? You pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Like who? The Caucasian? These people you call white people who received everything based on government stipend to remake the country in the new image of this fake shit that these boule, free black and white Freemasons agreed to go along with? That's what you're saying? And then in the middle is the white fake Indians who really all of their mothers is from China, which again we'll show again just to keep beating them in the head with it. So the running line is Moors and we're not Hebrews, and Hebrews were not Moors, and this ain't right. But then when you look back at old tapestry imageries from the old College of Arms, right? In books like Burke's Peerage, in old grimoires of the Chronicles of the Knights of Hospitaller, right? These things, you get into that, you see stuff like this. And as you see, this is a symbol of so-called Islam, which the Arabs did not use, right? Because remember, the Arabs came into Islam late, just like the white boys came to America late. And then this allegedly is the hex alpha, which allegedly is the symbol of them being so-called Hebrew, right? Yeah, I just said it. You can look at Burke's Peerage, look in books like that, old books of the chroniclers of the English lords. You can just go on the internet now. These things is popping up. I remember for years looking at finding deep, trying to find Orientalist painter names and finding sources and all of that. Now, you know what I mean? It's crazy. But this shatters that. This shatters that myth that then creates this whole fake story about who and what we are. And then what that does is it anchors us back into post three-dimensional space, because we're not now confined by the restriction of the identity, because we understand that the identity is one and the same, that the Hebrew nation was the Moorish nation, is the Moorish nation. What we call Hebrew Israelites are a product of the new Caucasian Zionist movement that came later. There was no nation of Israel in the world up until 1940. The ancient so-called kingdom of Israel, or what we talk about, you got to understand, was first a name, and then it represented a dude, and then it represented the children of that guy. You understand? And then it was adopted by people who then would break it up into tribes. But before all of that, it was a representation again of the 12 ganglion nerves that give elements to the true Lord, which is the pineal. So these are all veiled allegories that were actually physically made into human ritual to get everybody to identify the physical ritual and separate it from the spiritual aesthetic. You understand what I'm saying? For instance, this is a Kabbalic term. Everybody knows Hiram, right? Hiram Abiff. That's the name that they use, and they glorification of the murder of the builder of Solomon's temple and all of that. And that's the hidden name of the original man that they use in 8 day. In the Moorish Science Temple, there's the hidden name of Jesus that's supposed to go at or on the blood card of the sheep. It's only said amongst the adepts, whose secret name is supposed to be said amongst the adepts, based on the respect and reverence of the name and all that. So this practice of preserving the knowledge was eventually turned into a practice of concealing the knowledge. The more these so-called groups or so-called Freemasons and these people came into being, you understand? So one of the ancient names, or the so-called superlative names of the original man, is Adam Kadmon. Okay? So it says of him, this is from the Hebrew lexicon dictionary, in Kabbalah. Of him who is formless, the non-existent, also the eternal, but not first, is born the heavenly man. But after he created the form of the heavenly man, right? This is Adam ilallah. He used it as a vehicle wherein to descend, says the Kabbalah. Thus, Adam Kadmon is the avatara, or the avatar of the concealed power. After that, he, heavenly Adam, creates or engenders by the combined power of the Sephiroth, the earthly Adam. The work of creation is also begun by the Sephiroth, which is the woman, in the creation of the 10 Sephiroth, who are the Prajapatis, or of the Kabbalah, or likewise lords of all being. So what that's really saying is when I'll be saying, like, you exist, or we exist in the reality by which everything was taken, and actually we won. We've actually transcended the reality. Everybody's peace is all in a blissful form. But we project the aspect of us earthly, that part which has descended here, right, through the so-called Sephiroth, right, which technically is the ovum, right, and then exists in the Sephiroth, which are the 10 or 12 spheres, 13 being Thoth, which is the hidden one, that we understand as the earthly realms, which correspond to the 9 or 10 realms that we read about in the old so-called Nordic mythology, right? Which also corresponds to the 7 to 9 chakras that exist within, right, the Rama, when they speak of the high power from the Ramayana, in the Ramayana text. So you see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. So the part of us that is real and the part of us that we refer to as the soul are synonymous, yet one was created from the other, but it was not necessarily the first, but it was the first born of the heavenly spirit, what they call the Holy Spirit, what we would refer to as the Holy Breath. You understand what I'm saying? All right. So that then corresponds, like I said, to the body, the Yod-He Wad-He, right? Or the Yod-Ha Wad-Ha, as they say, which is the earth, fire, air, water, right? Yod-Ha Wad-Ha or Yod-He Wad-He, that's one of the high words that the Jews are not supposed to utter. The fake Jews are not supposed to utter because that's the form of creation. right? So we, being the creators of that, or the inheritors of that. This is a great definition. I don't know where I got it from, but big up to whoever summed it up. Right? The name of the land is Tamaure. Remember that. They keep saying Egypt, they keep saying all this other stuff, but it was really Tamaure, right? So Moray is what? Moor, right? And the people from Moray were called what? Moors, because the Muar, or the Ma and the Ray, right, come together, just like the ancient deity Olodumare, right? There's a book you can get called Voodoo: The Quantum Leap. Get that book. And it gets into that aspect. Olodumare Ashe, who is another aspect of the deep Olokun, which is the masculine aspect of the deep the feminine aspect of the deep Olokun, right? Whose earthly representation is Yemaya, right? Who then also is represented as Isis. See? Right? So Tamaray, the name of the land is Tamaray, which has a dual meaning. Look, the land of Amun Ra, the actual longitude and latitude of the geographical landmass, or masses in our understanding, and two, the physical body. See, the Moors, who settled in what was called Tahanesi, right, which was the so-called Nubian province of Abyssinia, not Ethiopia. See what I'm saying? Set up a school structure of science, language, law, mathematics, government, astrology, astronomy, military, alchemy, physiology, geometry, etc. These were your Neteru so-called gods. So when you see Amun and Tahuti and Aset and Asar and what's his name? Bast or whoever, each one of those represent an aspect of the society. You see what I'm saying? That they was maintaining and bringing to the whole. So what we perceive as these individual gods, Neteru, were the physical representations of what those people were manifesting through those totems. You understand? So the highest Buddha, the Neteru, are so-called gods. The Moors, which was a complete nation of high priests, right? High priest of Ainu, right? Because the Moors knew and always had the knowledge. Because collectively, they were the Anunnaki, right? The high black priests of Anu, or Anpu. The Moors, the complete nation of high priests, knew the highest knowledge was to know that man and creation are one and the same, referring to the essence as Heru Ra or Heru Ara, which we can say we manifest then later through the different epochs of these priests growing up in these new times. Now, Allah is the manifestation that they've been saying, which is why we can find it on the temple wall, like I showed you. The prana, the chi, the energy. So in whatever place they was at, they practicing it in the culture that they developed from that initial thought. The life source that lives in every vibration of the omniverse. The oldest definition of the word more, remember all vowels are interchangeable, means that the neter amen, the hidden one, or soul embedded in the pineal gland, as well as it means the high priests, the Tamaure, the Moor. Egypt is actually the remnant of which we know was Lemuria, Mu, Atlantis, Samoria. See what I'm saying? The Maori, the Morai, the Morena, the Amorite, right? The Moroccans, the Mauritanians, the Mauritians,
right? The Mercians, these are all the same people, right? The Moors on high, right? The Moroni, the Moors on high. The high priest coded the sciences of self in the mythology, no longer unveiling the so-called mysteries to the profane. Now the science could only be unveiled to those that were elect, elected, those who became elves, right? Who understood the relationship between arm, leg, arm, head. In ancient measurement system, a cubit was an arm's length, right? So 10 cubits would be 10 arms length. This before rulers. You know what I'm saying? This is before protractors. Like, this is how we was working it out based upon our physical body as the compass, our physical body as the actual engine creating everything out of nothing. And you got to think of the people as a race of people who were dedicated to that. So wherever they emerged after the golden age of that became them again. You understand what I'm saying? Right. We have separated our mind and our heart because we listen to music out of the true frequency. So we can like something in our head, but not like what it's actually saying. When at one time, what was said and what was felt and saw was simultaneous. And if one was off, you didn't deal with it at all. See, today that is called indifference, right? Or self isolation. But at one point, it was called restraint. You see? So the prophet said that we're descended from the ancient Moabites, Hittites, Canaanites, Amorites, right? This is what he said. This is what also the Torah says, which is the so-called Bible, right? The Old Testament, not the New John, except for Revelation. But technically, we're supposed to be reading it backwards from Revelation to Genesis, because we're in the Revelation now. You understand? Because the people who wrote it were taught by Maurs. Remember? Exactly. The Aton, the estate. Thank you, Jelani. Yes, right? So the Phoenicians spoke the Hamitic Semitic language closely allied to the Hebrew Phoenician, to that of the Phoenician and Hebrew. Though different dialects, many practically be regarded as the same language. So the Moors, i.e., the Canaanites, i.e., the Phoenicians, and the Hebrews, who were the people who came up and adopted the Canaanite ways and translated it as Hebrew, would be the same today as if you was in a room with somebody from Puerto Rico, somebody from Panama, somebody from Italy, somebody from, you see what I'm saying? Spain. They all speak in a version of Spanish, right? But some will understand each other better, you see, based upon the familial ties of who established the language. You understand? That's why people think that because you're born in a place, a Caucasian person could be born in Italy today. Yes, they're Italian because that place is the Italy of 1965 or whatever when they established it. But that's not the same Italy that built the buildings and all of that stuff that they in. They're just speaking the language to go along with how they were raised, you see? But that don't make them that. Yeah, get the circle 7 Quran. Tell you when he talks about the Canaanites, that's the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians and the Canaanites are the same people. And they are then the Moors. And they all then are the high priests of Anu. because the Phoenician kingdom was adjacent to what we call the ancient so-called Egyptian kingdom, right? Because they was all from the same line, right, of Canaan, not Ham. He found the Canaanite language similar to his own language. Abraham communicated very well to his inhabitants of this new land and adopted the Canaanite language, made certain modifications. It became known as Hebrew. So again, they got it from what was already there. They weren't the progenitor, you see. They were the converts. These was the ones that was born after the dwelling in Moab, after the fall of what they call the kingdom, after Solomon did all he did, and then they were dispersed, you see. And then what bonded them was the fact that they kept the Sabbath or whatever in whatever community under whatever ruler they was at. Understand? They didn't have their own state and technically still don't, because the state of Israel today is the Zionist state created by the brutish, the decoy white brutish through Rothschild. Then we get the Maru of India literature. The Maru of Indian literature is none other than the Moro, like Moro Kush, which we also read about as ancient Abyssinia, right? Nubia, right? Where the Nilo people, the Nilotic peoples was at, the giant so-called blacks. The primeval Moro that was long ago lost to cataclysm. See, the four kingdoms from that was the Saka, the Maga, the Manga, the Masaka, and Mansa. Okay, the Saka, were the Manga, the Maga, the Masaka, Mansa, and Mandaga. The Maga or the Magians or the magicians were of the Maka or the Persian inscription. When you get the book Consecrated Talismans by Prince Uriel Bey, it puts it into greater context of who these people were. These were the guys running what they called the Mauryan dynasty of ancient India. The Magi, the ones that came to see the Christ in the story. In real life, these are the melanosomes that visit the melacrites to create more melanin. You see what I'm saying? Remember, our knowledge base is coming from a non-physical to a physical. So what it sees as the physical is the representation of what we're manifesting it to be wherever we really at. But because we the oldest ones here, we were the ones with the longest memory, which is why we forgot. So from that, we get the Mandaga or the Mendis, who refer to themselves as the Mada or the Medis. These Medis and Madas were the people they called the Moguls, the Mogul Empire of Persia. See what I'm saying? And from them, they have the four parent family connection to the ancient Mandi speakers of so-called Africa. But remember, Africa means what? Residents of Carthage. Because Africa means Carthaginian citizens in the territory that they call Africa, right? Especially the Manding, who often accompanied the Dravidians out of Middle Africa into Asia. This is where the Scythians, the Tatarians, these are the Hittites, the eventual Turks. You see what I'm saying? Genghis and them. This is where they all coming from. This explains the close relationship between the Elamite, who are the pre-Sumerians, Samorians that we just read about, and the Manding languages that we also found here in America. Especially the resurgence came in the 13th century, which also coincided with the Almohad, with the Almoravid refortification of the Moorish Empire in Spain as well as America in the 13th century. The Kushite, the first cousins of the Kushite Mandi kingdoms lines of the Olmec Asians traveled from southeast of West Nubia to Sudan and formed the ancient kingdoms of the Mayas, the Incas, the Arawaks, the Carabics, the Chickawanas, in South America. So I'm showing you just basic literature, you see what I'm saying? The homogeneous aspect of what we are claiming ourselves to be based on what they put out there. I didn't write none of this. So it just said that all of those names or all of those places, these tribes came out of that. That's why they called the real American Indians Indians, because of they descendancy from the Chandragupta Mauryan dynasties by way of the Olmec, who is really the Z. Islam? They're making it complicated. The Prophet made it plain. Once he laid it out, and you start looking at the data, who they saying these people are, we just went through it. From non-physical, right, to physical. And then from the physical to what the nations are, and to the nations, the rise then of the Hebrews. So you see how late they came in the game? Look, in 1639, Moors and Turks. In 1639, the first black Moor birth was recorded. So this is the first one that the British was able to record. Look at the dates. This is when the British got there. The Delaware Moors or the Turks were not considered to be slaves because during the 17th century, their home countries were in friendship with the King of England, which means what? Treaty of peace and friendship, right? Their ships. In 1684, the Moors arrived in Delaware and South New Jersey. Where was the first Moorish Science Temple of America established? Newark, New Jersey, right? Their ships were marooned off the coast. Many Muslims were absorbed into the Indian tribes. Most likely the Native Americans were friendly enough to keep them from starving, to welcome them into their tribes because they had similar skin features. So this is what the geographic book is saying, that these people look the same as the other people. That means they're the same people. This is what the white man's saying. I don't care what these Negroes is talking about, right? And because they presented no serious threat to the existence of the Native Americans. So where is the slavery? Where's the slavery going on? Where the slavery at? Where the Moors enslaving everybody at? Yes, Mahogany is Michigan. That's right. It's actually mahogany, because that's where they used to get all the mahogany wood from. Look it up. The following Native American tribes have been found to be descendants of the Muslim Moors. Period. 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 The Alabama, which is all of Alabama, the Alabama Moors, who started Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras started in Alabama, and then the Moors in the French as jurisdictions adopted it, and then popped it off like crazy. But it started in Alabama by the Alabama Moors. The Anasazi, the Apaches, the Arab Indians of Summit, the Skarski County, Newark, the Arawak. See? The Arawaks, that means the ones in Jamaica, that means all of them down there was Moors and descended from Indians, which is why they call them the Indians of the West, or the West Indies, or the West Antilles, because they actually descended from the ancient Mauryan Chandragupta dynasties of ancient India, coming all the way out of the Mandi kingdom, the ancient Mandi kingdoms of Meroe Kush. Then by way of the ancient priesthood of the Tamaure race of high priest Maurs, who helped set it all off after the great cataclysm and the restart. This is what all the books say. This is what everybody say. We just look at it for what it is and stop trying to separate people and make people hate each other. The Creeks, the Hassana Misko. Look at that. Hassana Misko? If you were Indian worshiping the corn and the dirt and all that, how you got all these Islamic names? Like Hassan. Didn't we sign the Treaty of Peace and Friendship in the time of Hassan during Ramadan? In America? Okay. Okay, the Mohegans, the Makas, the Mecca Indians, the Meccans, the Mohammeds, the Mohegans, the Nanticokes, the Seminoles. I would add the Seneca, the Wabanaki, the Abenaki, like Anunnaki. See what I'm saying? Where does the dog of Anubis come from? America. That's the Zotalo dog with the bad teeth. Because the melanin is so thick, it don't let the teeth thing. That's the only reason why I wouldn't get one. Not for it ain't the jackal from India over there. Like they lying from Egypt over there. It ain't a jackal. That's what they did in the mummy. You think I'm saying? Like that's what they said. It wasn't a mummy. All the animals that these Egyptians used are coming from America. The hawk is an American hawk for Heru. The falcon. Meanwhile, they parading our ancestors down the street in a procession like that's a good thing. That's how you know it's not their ancestors. They would not be digging up their ancestors, Muslim as they are, parading them down the street and propping them up in museums. That's why Zachary Howard, the dude in charge of that, is a heavy 33rd degree, 32nd degree Mason over there in the Temple of Luxor, in the Freemasonic Temple of Luxor, doing all the rituals on them, eating the pineal glands, what they all doing. Look, this is from another source. A careful study of the names of Native American tribes revealed that many names are derived from Arab and Islamic roots and origins. The Anasazi, the Apache, the Arawak, the Araucana, where we get Arkansas from and Kansas from. The Chavin, which is the Chavin. The Cherokee, which is the Ananui and Tasalagi. The Cree, like in Captain Marvel 2. Right? The Hohokam, the Hoopa, the Hopi, the Maka, the Mahogany, the Mohawk, right? The Nazca, the dudes who did the Nazca lines from space, the Zulu, the Zuni. These are all Pueblo cultures, what they call Pueblo cultures out in the West, which was old Mauritania. Yeah. So look, where's the slaves at? We haven't yet to talk about no real slaves in terms of us being that. We have yet to talk about anybody else other than us. Everybody we've defined to be that is who we say we are. So what are they talking about? They're creating propaganda because all of these guys work with the government. All these guys is there to turn us into haters of our own selves to keep their Freemasonic ritual going. That's what they doing. It has nothing to do with me or you and I not being in the club or hating that we're not a part of their, ritual system and all, and nothing to do with that. I just don't participate in things like that due to the sacrificial nature of it and how it still celebrates the murder and separation of our people. And if you deal with that, no matter how benign, you're being a part of that. The same way, whether or not I buy a certain product, I don't know how they're creating that. If I buy Nike sneakers, I in some way are participating in the child labor things that they doing to these children. But you see what I'm saying? If we gonna boycott one thing, we gotta go off on the whole thing. In regards to what we say and whatever, we still are at a stage where we are fortunate enough to even gather like this and bust it down. Where the other half of us is just duly participating in whatever. This is the Zolo dog. This is Anubis. Case closed. So they're done. All of their Indian stuff is actually Muslim or Moorish, right? And by Moorish, we mean Tamaure, real Moor. So when they say Moor come from the word Greek, we just took it back to Tamaure. So you're saying that the Greeks have a better definition of what the Moors were than the Moors or the so-called Tamarians themselves? And how come whenever you use the term Tamaure, that's why they would say things like, oh, well, the Egyptians didn't use the vowels. That's not true. They used the vowels interchangeably. That's more accurate. Because if we put the vowels in it, then we would see it spells more and not just TMR or MR. So, you see what I'm saying? How is any of this untrue? How is any of this not true? How are we bugging? How am I bugging? Please tell me. Please let me know. You know what I'm saying? Because the way that it seemed like it was one way, the world was one way, something happened again, or maybe what we understand as the New Madrid earthquake, for instance, was just a aftershock of the initial deluge of what we perceive as the flood. This global warming stuff that don't exist. The sea levels rising and all that don't exist. They just get more replenished because there's an underground aquifers, and this part of the world channels the water from the other aspects of the 9 realms. So there's unlimited water. It's unlimited. It's coming from some place that they could never get to because it's coming from all things in no place at once. You can't stop water. You can never stop. Doesn't exist. Name one time in history that you haven't seen water. Think about it. Never. Never. Name one day in your life that you haven't had water. Never. You know how blessed you are? You know how blessed you are? Where if you just wanted water, right now you could just go get it. In the midst of an apocalypse, where people believe that they are dying from something that they have no symptoms of, only to get tested and then get injected to get systems to get the symptoms that they eventually die from, with no liability. You see how blessed we are? I once had a tenant that only drank soda. No wonder why this chick was crazy. Only Pepsi. I realized the other day I've never had a Dr. Pepper in my life. Because before I go to bed, I strive to incorporate myself before I disincorporate myself into the sleep, to the dream, which is whatever reality is in. So I try to go back in my memory, think of all the things that I could think of, the most how small or obscure that add to who the physical aspect of who I am is. You know what I'm saying? And then drift off. Right? So in all of, when's the last time you had a dream like the water, which again is the Sephiroth, you see what I'm saying, that we read about, that forms Adam Kadmon. That's the lubricant between all dimensions. That's why in the movie Constantine, he had to put his foot in the bowl of water to be able to go into the higher dimensions. That's why I tell people that have trouble sleeping, put a bowl of water under your bed. Make sure there's nothing under your bed, no shoes, none of that under your bed. You put a bowl of water under your bed. It helps it right away. On your screen, you see the Alamo, which is located in San Antonio, Texas, which was built again by the Almohad Maurs, right? Who were known to let the inferior go first. That's why in chess, the white piece go first because it was always the weakest in the game. So the Almohad had a thing with it when they would come in and do their jousting and stuff. They would let the weak knights, who they considered the white boys or people under the white banner, to go first. So the Almohad Caliphate from 1000 to about 1600 was then reestablished under the Sultanate of Tenochtitlan, Tenochtitlan, which was the capital of what we now today call Mexico City. So a lot of the stories and the stuff they talk about it like that, they still are not putting out the fact that what we understand as Mexico was established through this Moorish sultanate here in America. And that's what the Alamo was. And that part of the deal was that they would never allow any of the real Moors to go back and make salat at what they called the church, which was really the first mosque built back in the days. But it actually goes down further than this. This is just the very, very top. Remember, I told you with the Tartan buildings, boom, they built all of this up around that. This keeps going down. And then that union, the Almohad Caliphate, was the Moroccan Berber Muslim movement of the empire founded in the 12th century. The Almohad movement was founded by Ibn Tumar, although the so-called Berber Masmuda tribes of southern Morocco. Okay, now keep that in mind. When we say southern Morocco now, we need to look at it from this perspective and not the perspective that they talk about. Give me 1 second. Yes, that's why to remember the Alamo and all of that. But Davy Crockett and all of these dudes is black people. Sam Houston and all these dudes is black people fighting to keep white slaves and foreign black slaves under their boot. They became white in this after they lost the thing, and then the white Freemason dudes assumed the name and the identities. You see? And then the school through this is also why they founded the Texas, was that Texas Instruments? You ever heard of that? Who used to do all of the school books, create all the history books. Remember that? Texas Instruments? That was a Freemasonic company. These are the dudes that put in the history like that for us to believe that all these people. You understand? See how far I go? How far back I go? And how much we participated and didn't even know? That's what I'm saying. That's why we can't act like we above getting duped. Like, nope. We grew up on that. So boom, we talking about Texas, right? We're talking about this. Or Texas, we talking about this, which is also Old Mauritania according to the Congressional Globe document, Congressional record. You see? But then when we talking about Southern Morocco, it says that the Moors from Southern Morocco moved over into their thing. I'm trying to find one. Give me 1 second, guys. All laid out too. Sometimes you get on the roll. But essentially, southern Morocco would be in the area of what today we would call Philadelphia. So when we read these books now from the proper perspective of where and how the people actually were working and in the direct proximity, then we get to know where these other people were. So it wasn't only about destroying the history, it was about literally rewriting and recasting the history, which is why movies, again, was so or are so important to the overall structure of all global societies because they keep the people pacified. See what I'm saying? And therefore, all corporations, I think, also have a maybe unspoken mandate to produce products that over time would actually kill the very people that they're creating the products for in order to always replenish the reality as it stands with the temporal controls based upon people's need for luxury, consistency, convenience. See, you notice all of those words start with Khan, you see, which can mean king, but it can also mean to conceal or to constrain or to conquest. You know what I'm saying? It depends upon your level of knowledge in the priesthood that allows you to do that. So once, let's say, Noble Joe Ali, peace be upon him, did his work, help establish everything for us all to get right, other people wanted to take control, you see, of that birthright, you see, so that way they could, for whatever reason, maintain this illusionary society exactly the way it is, improving only on it from the perspective of deeper ways to get people to give up the control. Because when you try to overtly control them is when you fall, you see. So when we speak about the Arabian Peninsula or the southern Morocco, that also part of Morocco was also referred to as Mercia. When you look up the inhabitants and all of that of Mercia, these were Moors, see, New Mercia. But this is also New Morocco, New Castile, New Hispania, peace up the ancestral adornment, New Andalusia, right, which is Alaska, right? But then when we talk about the Andalusian, the Arabian Peninsula, Mount Arabia right here is on this side of Georgia, right here, making what? This part here, the Arabian Peninsula, and this part here being the Iberian Peninsula. You understand? Because this is in Georgia. Why would the Indians who were there before the white people name their mountain Arabia in what we consider the southeastern portion of the United States, which is also the southeastern portion of Africa, right? And on this southeastern portion, these guys, right here, have a mountain named Arabia off the coast of Georgia, making then the coast of Georgia the Arabian Peninsula or the peninsula of Mount Arabia. Either way you put it, either way, however you want to say it, that's what that means. Then that means further down in Florida, it makes sense on the map where it says that the Iberian Peninsula is in what we call Florida because that was Iberia. Whereby Hispania, as we see on this map, which I've shown a lot, but tells the tale, we see is in what becomes Texas. See how that works? Which is